Welcome, everyone. I am Adeshewa Josh, and this is Africa Matters. We begin in Burkina Faso, where the military has ousted President Roch Kabore, triggering condemnation from the international community, despite popular support on the ground. In Nigeria, we take a look at an initiative that aims to bring more women into tech by teaching IT and graphic design skills. And as the Africa Cup of Nations hits up, Cameroonians are showcasing their football skills and culture. Burkina Faso has become the fourth former French colony in West Africa to be rocked by a coup in the past 17 months. On Sunday, soldiers led by Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Damiba attacked President Roch Kabore's convoy and detained him. They then dissolved the government, suspended the constitution, and forced President Kabore to announce his resignation. Hours later, hundreds of people took to the streets of the capital Ouagadougou to celebrate the military takeover. Some carried placards saying no to France, calling for an end to French security operations in the Sahel. Many are hoping the army will tackle the years-long security challenges Burkina Faso has been facing from militant groups.
The future will tell us if the coup is good for the country or not. In any case, I insist on the fact that the ousted government was terrible at governing. And that made what we've just experienced in Burkina Faso seem like a deliverance.
The coup comes after months of anti-government protests against President Kabore's failure to curb an armed insurgency. Thousands of people have been killed and 1.4 million displaced over the past 7 years. In 2015, militant groups linked to Al-Qaeda and Daesh in neighboring Mali launched attacks in the north and on the capital Ouagadougou. President Kabore had just taken power following a popular uprising that led to the downfall of long-serving leader Blaise Compaoré. Al-Qaeda and Daesh-linked militant groups have been expanding in West Africa's Sahel for more than a decade, following an armed conflict in Mali between the government and secessionist Tuareg rebels. Despite a peace deal in 2015, many of the key provisions were never implemented, including the disarmament of former fighters. And so far, counter-terrorism efforts by France and other Western allies have failed to prevent violent attacks. And last year, France began withdrawing some of its troops deployed in the Sahel region. Regional body ECOWAS, France, the EU, and the UN have strongly condemned the coup in Burkina Faso. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says the takeover could further destabilize the Sahel and pose an international security threat. He's called on the military to respect democratic values and re-establish democratic institutions.
The role of military must be to defend their countries and their peoples, not to attack their governments and to fight for power. Democratic societies are a value that must be preserved. Military coups are unacceptable in the 21st century.
Let's hear more from Asita Kanko, born and raised in Burkina Faso and now a member of the European Parliament. She joins me from Brussels. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Is it a coincidence that the 4 military coups in West Africa in the past 17 months have taken place in former French colonies?
Well, I think in politics, little has to do with coincidence. When we look at the situation in the West, in the Sahel, it has been 2 years already that in this European Parliament we have been working on the topic. I have been asking the EU to focus on tackling jihadism in the region, on controlling funds that are circulating as well, but we have seen little result, little action. So I think the issue there is bad governance, is also a repetition of the same thing over and over again. In 1987, we had a coup in Burkina Faso. So since then, what has changed for the people who have been fighting for freedom? I think that's an important question we need to ask. Little has changed politically, and people have their hopes up.
You said hardly anything is a coincidence in politics. What do you mean by that?
I mean, you know, we can see things coming. We could see that these jihadists are progressing in the region, in the Sahel. You could see that they are winning territories, and you could see that the impact of any military intervention or any action again to push them back did not really work. And you could see that the soldiers, both in Mali or in Burkina Faso, were actually starving. We saw news. And where were they killed? They were usually killed near gold mines, like Inata, for example, in Burkina Faso. So when you see all these things, of course, we have the obligation in politics to not be surprised by occurrences. We have to anticipate them. And this power of anticipation has been lacking a lot.
7 years ago, young people led the popular uprising that ousted Blaise Compaoré. Now, many of them are celebrating the ouster of the democratically elected government that replaced him. Can the military deliver on the popular demand of stopping militant attacks, and how?
People, when, I have the privilege of having seen the situation once from that side, being a Burkina-born person. And I also have the perspective of an elected member of the European Parliament from the Western perspective. Mm-hmm. If you look at this situation, it has to be more nuanced than what the West is always saying about situations in Africa. It is indeed usual to see people celebrating a coup. But for people here, it's totally not something they can fathom. When I see the people who are celebrating the streets today, we do not have any evidence that these were the same people who actually kicked Compaoré out through the revolution in 2014. But what we know is why did people want him to leave? They wanted transition. They wanted a president that actually worked, served the people. They wanted to stand up for the right to self-determination. What happened the days past since then? They did not get any of these. What they had is a written promise of transition, of democracy, but then I think people are frustrated. Is this now the solution? Can we trust the military? I think that when there is the army that take the power, it's always a moment of defeat. It is always a moment of confusion. But let's see what is going to happen. What I hope for is that there will not be bloodshed, but I hope that we will listen to the population, because the only winner here today is not the military, it's nobody. It is Russia, and it is the jihadists, the radical Islamists that are winning. These are the winners. But we want the population to win.
Okay, so you said that Russia and the jihadists are the winners in this whole mess. Do you see Russia filling the security vacuum, as French influence obviously is waning in its former colonies in West Africa?
Yes, I think France, both France and some African officials should just realize that we are in 2022, that the colonization is supposed to be over since the 60s, and that we need each of us to take responsibility. African leaders need to take responsibility over their own people. If they wait for France to do it, France can't, and it's just their people. So today, French influence is, of course, waning, and Russian influence is growing. While the EU was busy believing that we were still in the 60s, Russia and China were economically and politically expanding, including in Africa. Today, we have about 100,000 militaries from Russia standing at the eastern border of Europe in Ukraine, and we do have Russia invading politically West Africa. So when we look at that, it's, of course, a terrible, terrible problem. When I see the Russian flag in Burkina Faso, I worry, of course. What I want to see is the young people of Burkina waking up in the morning and saying, look, I have hope, I have my job, and I will be safe today. This is what they need, like everyone else worldwide.
Thank you so much, Asita Kanko. We have more stories coming up for you here on Africa Matters, including...
I am Aris in Tamfo in Cameroon, and I am reporting on how the host nation is showcasing its culture through traditional dances at football's Africa Cup of Nations.
I'm Adeswa Egbon. I'm in Abuja, and I will introduce you to two successful Nigerian women who are passing on opportunities they've had in the tech field to scores of other women.
Technology is the biggest industry in the world, but women are being left behind in the growing sector. The UN's education and cultural body, UNESCO, says less than 4% of women undergo IT training. But one Nigerian firm is trying to change that. Adesua Egbon is in Abuja to tell us how.
UNICEF says Nigeria has the world's highest number of children out of school. More than 10 million children have never set foot in the classroom. and girls here don't have the same educational opportunities as boys. They account for the majority of children who aren't going to school. Down the road, that translates into fewer job opportunities. Aisha Ibrahim Buhari and Mariam Abubakar are among the few women in Nigeria who studied for jobs in the tech field, and they are reaping the dividends. They want more women to have the same opportunities, so they started the training program, Women Design IT.
It's important to note that the digital design market is worth over $45 billion globally, and the cross-border nature of tech has made it easy for designers to gain employment from all over the world from the comfort of their own homes. Giving women the skills required to participate in this huge market has helped our participants in gaining employment and freelancing, with some even creating their own startup companies and employing other women.
Participants learn digital and graphic design. Mariam Abubakar is a graduate of the program. It propelled her to professional success, and she's returned to Women Design IT to help other people like her.
The skills I got in graphic design in Raza Technology have enabled me gain experience whereby I was employed in multiple places, and also which led to the starting of my business, Idea Tank, and enabled me gain successes far and wide. And with that, I've come back to teach fellow females so that they can also acquire the success that I have.
Since 2019, close to 100 students have participated in the Women Design IT program. According to the research company Global Industry Analysts, the technology industry is expected to be worth more than $5.3 trillion by the end of this year. The African market is also growing, with about 450 tech hubs in countries like South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, and Egypt. The demand for IT specialists is huge.
Personally, I believe that a lot of problems faced by women in this part of the world is caused by economic dependence and lack of self-fulfillment. So this program has the potential to help women become economically dependent and meet their right potential.
Digital designers like Aisha Ibrahim Buhari are not just educating and creating jobs for young women in Nigeria. They are also expanding Africa's technology industry and the opportunities that go along with it. Adesua Egbon, Africa Matters, Abuja.
Mount Nyiragongo, an active volcano in the Democratic Republic of Congo, killed 32 people and destroyed many homes when it erupted in May last year. And it could erupt again at any time. But a new power plant project on the nearby Lake Kivu hopes to turn the gases the volcano emits into an opportunity. Remesa Choda has more.
It's one of Africa's Great Lakes, and it lies between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda. But Lake Kivu is what scientists describe as a killer lake. Under the seemingly tranquil lake is a massive accumulation of methane and carbon dioxide caused by thousands of years of volcanic activity from Nyiragongo. If triggered, it could cause an explosion, resulting in a poisonous gas that could potentially kill thousands of people.
The risk with this kind of lake is that we have oversaturation of gas in the water, and that it may trigger what we call a limnic eruption. What is a limnic eruption? It's a huge explosion of gas from deep waters to the surface, which will create waves, tsunami at surface, and so on. And in the 80s in Cameroon lakes, it killed more than 1,000 people. So we don't want that it happens here.
The lake, however, shows both peril and promise. In a world first, the Kivu Watt project, located on Rwanda's side of the lake, is tapping into these abundant gases and transforming them into electricity.
We try to turn these threats into opportunity. So removing this gas, if it's done correctly, may help to reduce the risk of a limnic eruption. And of course, when using this gas, we can also help the country to develop by, for example, producing electricity, then we have two chances from one threat.
The facility pumps water saturated with gases upwards. As it rises, the water and gas separate as the pressure changes. The project is described as halfway between a thermal and a renewable energy plant.
When you compare the emissions, the carbon emission, we compare from kilowatt as compared to a diesel plant. Kilowatt is like 3 times less polluting as compared to a conventional diesel-driven power plant, and is 5 to 6 times less polluting in terms of carbon emission to a traditional or conventional peat power plant. So I would say while we are burning this gas here, even if it is a thermal plant, it's still considered as a clean source of energy.
Analysts believe, depending on the rate of extraction, it could take centuries to deplete these vast gas reserves. But the company hopes by removing the methane, it's lowering the chances of a catastrophic explosion. Mesa Chodar, Africa Matters.
And here's a roundup of other stories making news across the continent. Tropical storm Anna has killed more than 40 people in Madagascar, Mozambique and Malawi. The storm formed off the east coast of Madagascar and made landfall on Monday. A week of torrential rains caused floods and mudslides. Several bridges have been washed away and roads were submerged, causing widespread power outages in the 3 countries. A Red Cross flight has delivered medical supplies to Ethiopia's war-torn Tigray region. It's the first delivery to Mekelle since September. In the coming weeks, the group hopes to send more medical assistance by road to health facilities in the Amhara and Afar regions, which have also been severely impacted by the conflict. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus is set to secure a second term as the Director General of the World Health Organization. He's running uncontested for the position in May. The first African leader of the global health body has expressed his gratitude for the ongoing support, but he's faced criticism back home in Ethiopia after he accused the government of blocking aid to Tigray. The government blames Tigrayans for preventing desperately needed humanitarian assistance from entering the northern region. Thousands of Sudanese demonstrators have rallied outside the UN mission in Khartoum to protest against its attempt to resolve the ongoing political crisis. Demonstrators say they don't want foreign interference in domestic affairs. The UN launched talks with rival Sudanese factions earlier this month. The country has been rocked by a wave of bloody protests since a military coup in October. And Ugandan street food known as Rolex has made history. According to Guinness World Records, this giant rolled chapati filled with fried eggs and vegetables weighs a whopping 204.6 kilograms. A Rolex is Uganda's answer to a filled pancake or burrito. It took 15 people to roll this giant snack. We head to Cameroon next, where the week began with a deadly stampede at a football stadium in the capital. It's not clear what happened, but it seems the crush happened as fans tried to access a closed gate in order to get into the arena where the national side was playing Comoros in the Africa Cup of Nations. A government investigation is underway. Now, Cameroon is using the more than 500 fan zones across the country to not only screen the football matches, but also to showcase the country's rich culture. Arsene Tamfel has been visiting some of the viewing centers and brings us this report.
When night falls in Cameroon, it's time for football, and fan zones go crazy. Cameroon is hosting the Africa Cup of Nations for the first time in 50 years.
It's a dream come true. I'm very happy, I must say. Those who have not been there, you miss because don't know when Cameroon hosts the AFCON again. They brought the trophy to Cameroon. We want to retain that trophy. We don't want that trophy to go.
The country is in the grip of football fever ever since 24 African nations arrived here for the 4-week tournament. Cameroonians are fully supporting their national football team, the Indomitable Lions, and are hopeful the host nation will win the trophy. But authorities want the tournament to be remembered not just for the brilliant performance of the team, but also for the rich cultural diversity of the country. All over the country, more than 250 ethnic groups that make up the Central African nation are exhibiting their culture through traditional dances in fan zones just before the matches began. Cameroonians want their culture to be seen by the world as more foreigners continue to arrive to watch the tournament.
Our culture is our identity. So, you know, the Tico municipality is a place where when you come, you meet diverse cultures. And in places like this, we take advantage to sell our culture because we know the whole world is watching.
Beyond the dancing and the singing, traditional leaders are invoking the spirits of the land to ensure victory for the indomitable lions.
Culture goes with sports. As a traditional ruler, in fact, my blessings to the lions must take place, must have their way. And I think traditional rulers all over Cameroon, wherever they find themselves, the ancestors and God Almighty have placed their hands upon Cameroon.
Fans say they will continue drumming up support for the national team while hoping that they will emerge champions when the tournament ends on February the 6th. Aris Intamfo, Africa Matters, Douala, Cameroon.
Staying in Cameroon, since declaring independence in 1960, forests have become a major source of income for the country. According to the Volcanic Association, the woodlands contribute about 20% to the country's budget. But timber companies destroy 80,000 square kilometers each year, and the communities living in these tropical forests face perilous conditions. Natasha Hussein has the story.
These indigenous Baka people are among the oldest ethnic groups in Cameroon. They're also one of Africa's last hunter-gatherer communities, and they've relied entirely on forests to survive for thousands of years.
We're connected to forests. Forests are our homeland. We meet all our needs and food from forests. We're now banned from entering the forest. We have to leave the forests.
But their home in the south of the country has become a target for commercial interests. According to the Center for International Forestry, logging and mining threatens the livelihoods of about 10,000 Baka people, forcing them to abandon their nomadic lifestyle by limiting access to the forests and hunting grounds.
They are not an agricultural society. They meet their needs from forests. If all forests are cut down, basically Bakas will lose their identity.
Baka people say they want to live and raise their children on their ancestral lands. They also accuse authorities and logging companies of forcibly removing them from forests.
They beat us when they see us in the forest. We can no longer find the trees that we need. The trees that we use in healthcare no longer exist because trees are cut down every day and they're loaded on trucks and taken away.
Unofficially, more than 3/4 of Baka people don't exist. Most of them were born in the forests and don't even have identification cards.
I want an ID card because I have to show my ID when I reach a police checkpoint. For instance, if we lose our lives when we have gone far away from here, they can know where I came from and who my family is.
Bakas are struggling to preserve their culture and traditional way of life. They're calling on authorities to respect the rights of indigenous inhabitants and halt deforestation before they become foreigners in their own land. Natasha Hussein, Africa Matters.
This week, we explore Livingstone, the southwest town of Zambia. With its rich scenery and heritage, it's the tourist capital of the country and owes its existence primarily to its proximity to Victoria Falls. Let's take a closer look. That's our show this week. Please share your thoughts and suggestions about the stories you've seen on this episode or ideas you would like us to cover on Twitter using the hashtag AfricaMatters. feel free to reach out to me on my personal handle at @adeshowajosh. You can watch this episode and more on YouTube. Just search Africa Matters. Like, comment, and share with friends and family. We'll leave you with these images from across the continent.